midnight screams.
I opened my eyes slowly. My head was spinning and my throat ached. I was so thirsty. That was the first thing I noticed. I licked my dry, cracked lips and looked around until the scene began to sharpen. My whole body throbbed with pain, and I realized it was because I was bound tightly to an iron chair in the middle of an empty room with filthy, barren walls. I could feel the cold, damp floor on my bare feet. A single light bulb illuminated the room, dangling from the ceiling by a rope. Its movement cast dark, dancing shadows on the ground. A door was in front of me, but I couldn't see anything beyond it except for the wall of the corridor outside. I tried to clear my head, to remember how I had gotten here. I squeezed my eyes shut and forced myself not to panic, slowing my breathing and focusing my thoughts, trying to gather the fragments of memory that might explain why I was in this place. I couldn't remember a thing. I opened my eyes and sighed. My dry throat pulsed with pain. I could hear sounds echoing from the hallway beyond the door. Screams, a metallic clatter, howls, all of it echoed from a great distance, but it did nothing to ease my anxiety. "Hello?" I croaked, my voice distorted and weak. A tightness seized my chest, but I managed to clear my throat and call out again. "Is anyone there? Hello?" The dark hallway remained silent, save for those distant, echoing sounds. I shut my mouth and tried to work at the knots on my hands, but the rope was impossibly tight. I fought to keep my imagination from flooding with the horrors that might await me. Why couldn't I remember anything? Suddenly, there were footsteps outside the door, quick, light footsteps. My hopes surged as I looked toward the doorway, praying for some kind of help. A little boy ran into the room, dressed in red onesie pajamas and wearing a demon mask. 2 eye holes in the mask revealed a pair of blue eyes that watched me with curiosity. I recoiled. Just as I was about to speak, I realized something was wrong. The boy's eyes were enormous, impossibly round, and looked as though they were bulging from their sockets. A chill ran down my spine, but I shook the feeling off. This child might be able to help me. "Hey," I whispered quickly. "Kid, can you help me get out of here?" The boy moved closer, tilting his head to one side, but remained silent. I tried to twist my bound hands forward from behind my back. "Untie these ropes. They're not supposed to be here. There must be some kind of misunderstanding." The boy circled me, observing me with his masked eyes, and stopped in front of me again. He leaned in close and whispered, his voice small and soft, "You did a bad thing." Confused, I shook my head. "No, this is a mistake. I haven't done anything." The boy's large blue eyes suddenly looked sad. "Oh, but you did. A very, very bad thing." I shook my head again, more forcefully this time. "No, I'm sorry. I don't remember. Please, just help me out of this chair." Suddenly, before either of us could say another word, a man rushed into the room. He was heavy-set and wore a pair of overalls. His wrinkled face was twisted in a furious scowl. He was holding a shotgun. "I didn't do anything," I cried as he charged toward us. "Why am I here?" The large man ignored me and grabbed the boy, shoving him against the wall. The child cried out as his back hit the concrete, his eyes looking up at the man, saying nothing. The man raised the shotgun, placed the barrel against the boy's forehead, and pulled the trigger. Everything splattered against the wall. The sight hit me like an iron fist to the gut. A ringing filled my ears and time seemed to slow down as I watched the headless body slump to the ground in utter shock. I began to hyperventilate and time snapped back to normal. "Oh fuck!" I screamed, struggling against my bonds, my eyes wide with shock. "What the hell?" The man paid me no mind as he bent down to pick up the boy's body. He threw it over his shoulder and walked straight out the door. All at once, the hallway erupted in sinister laughter, a chorus of gleeful howls. I shut my eyes, trying to block out the sounds as fear consumed me. A moment later, the cacophony subsided, and I slowly opened my eyes, still unable to believe what I had just witnessed. "Hello," I jumped, realizing another man was now standing directly in front of me. He was dressed simply in a white shirt and jeans. He had short brown hair and looked to be in his 30s. His green eyes were dull and lifeless, his lips turned down in a permanent frown. "What is happening? Where am I?" I cried, the fear in my stomach churning. The man crossed his arms. "So you're the new one?" He shook his head. "You people make me sick." My mouth trembled, questions forming, but he flicked his hand dismissively, silencing me. He ran his tongue over his teeth. "Looks like you've already witnessed some of this place's horrors, eh? Yeah, I can tell just by looking at your eyes. You're terrified. You've seen something, haven't you? It's not so bad when you think about it. You've only been here for 5 minutes, and you've already pissed yourself. Where am I?" I demanded, unable to control myself. "What do you want?" The man uncrossed his arms. "I bet you want to get out of here, don't you? You want to go home to your family and friends." "Please," I interrupted. "Whatever I did to you, I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry, but I don't remember anything." The man rolled his eyes, bored. "You didn't do anything to me. You did this to yourself. You really don't remember?" I shook my head, and tears began to stream down my face. Fear was replaced by despair. He looked at me with contempt. "You waited for your wife to leave for work. Then you went out to the shed and hanged yourself. You're already dead." The most recent memories flooded my mind. My eyes widened. I wanted to deny what he said, but he was right. I had taken my own life. The event replayed in my mind like a bullet, leaving me trembling. "Anyway, I'm Danny," the man said, ignoring the look of shock on my face. "And I'm second in command around here. I handle orientation. I want to get this over with quickly because I'm sick of telling the same story over and over to another suicidal bastard. You got a question before I begin?" He stared at me while I, still reeling, tried to organize my thoughts into something coherent. This was all so terrifying. Why had I killed myself? I fought through the fog in my mind, and the confusion began to lift. I had just lost my job. Yes, that was the start of it. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to remember more. I lost my job and was about to lose the house. My wife, Tess, had found out and was going to leave me. I had no way out, no options left. I never expected to be fired, so I had no savings. I was broke, soon to be homeless, and my wife hated me for it. There was something else. Yes, my wife was having an affair. I'd seen the texts on her phone while she was sleeping and confirmed my suspicions. My life was spiraling out of control with no other options. Humiliated and ashamed, I decided that death was the only choice. "Hey, asshole, got a question or not?" Danny asked, snapping his fingers in front of my face. I was pulled back to reality and asked a single question. "Is this hell?" Danny replied. "That's what all of you ask." He began to pace in front of me. "No, this isn't hell, and it isn't heaven. This is the Black Farm, and no, I didn't name it. This is where God sends the souls of those who took their own lives, the suicides. See, He doesn't really know what to do with you, and neither do the devils. There are genuinely good people who end their own lives. Seems a little cruel to damn them to hell for eternity over one moment of weakness, right? Personally, I think God and the devil basically got tired of thinking about it, and so they sent you lot here, to the Black Farm." "God created this place?" I asked, growing more confused. Danny spat on the floor and laughed. "Sure, at one point, but he lost control of it and put the pigs in charge." "What are the pigs?" I asked, not sure I wanted to know the answer. Danny held up a hand, annoyed. "Can I finish, you prick? God made this place a long, long time ago, put the pigs in charge, and forgot about it for a while. Well, with his back turned, the pigs decided to use their newfound power to try and create a little world of their own. The chaotic nightmare you see all around you is what's left of that experiment. The Black Farm used to be a lot better than this, but the pigs wanted things to be different. They wanted to create a world in their image. The people you see here, these monsters, they are the pigs' attempts at creating living beings. Instead of another version of God's earth, these horrible abominations are full of sin and hate, and they run amok. It's chaos. The Black Farm is a circus of freaks and monsters, and you're here for eternity. Fear simmered inside me like hot oil. No, this couldn't be my end. I didn't believe in things like this. This wasn't real. I'd wake up soon and realize it was all just a nightmare. Sure. Danny stood over me and slapped me across the face. Hey, don't get too excited. I'm not finished." I looked up at him with watery eyes. Danny smiled. "You can always feed the pigs." The breath escaped my lungs in a hot rush. "What does that mean?" Danny spread his arms wide, still smiling. "It's simple. Feed the pigs. If you do, there's a chance you'll be sent back to your old life." "And what happens if I'm not sent back?" I stammered. "You'll be sent to hell. So, flip a coin. Stay here with us, or feed the pigs. If you choose to stay, I'll let you go right out there." He gestured toward the door. "But let me warn you, what's waiting for you down that hall? Well, it might as well be hell." I swallowed hard, trying to process all this. Why wouldn't I try feeding the pigs? Whatever it meant, there was a sliver of hope. I would take it. Stay forever in the Black Farm, be sent to hell, or feed the pigs. I would do anything for a chance to go back. This nightmare made the problems in my life seem like nothing. Danny held up a hand before I could speak. "I'll let you think for a bit. I'll be back." "I want to feed the pigs," I cried, not wanting to spend another second in this room. I could hear a woman crying down the hall now. Her cries were rising in pitch, as if being suppressed by something. My breathing grew ragged, my throat still raw. Danny registered the sound and winced. "Sounds nasty," he said under his breath as the woman's voice softened into pained moans. Something was hitting her, something big, and I didn't want my imagination to get the better of me. "Please," I gasped, unable to catch my breath. Let me feed the pigs. I don't want to be here any longer." Danny turned his back to me. "I'll be back. Enjoy your time alone. Really think about the situation you're in. All the options here carry weight. And remember, you did this to yourself." And with that, he was gone, leaving me in the dimly lit room. The water dripping, staring at me, was an armless man. He slithered across the floor like a worm. His bald head was caked in filth, his legs bound together with wire, forcing him to wriggle to move. His eyes had no lids and were wide open, two bloodshot orbs that stared up at me with ravenous hunger. His teeth had been removed and replaced with long screws driven straight into his gums. A chain was wrapped around his neck. I followed the chain with my eyes to see where it led. Outside the door, holding the other end of the chain, was a tall, naked man. His skin was smooth and saggy, covered in scales, just like his armless pet. A soiled bag was pulled over his head, revealing only a single, bloodshot eye that stared right at me. He just stared, his hand hiding his genitals. His breathing was heavy and labored. As the armless man began to crawl toward me again, the tall one started moving his hand. I screamed as the screw-filled mouth bit at me again. My cries only seemed to excite the naked man more. "Get off me! Stop!" I shrieked in terror. I tried to kick the man on the floor, doing my best to avoid his sharp metal teeth. I brought my heel down on his head, and he screamed. A sound of satisfaction escaped the tall man's mouth, and I turned away as a puff of black smoke shot onto the floor. There was a jangling of chains, and I looked back to see them both leaving the room, the armless man being dragged out the door. I looked at where the tall man had been standing and saw a pile of dead ants. I vomited a thick layer of bile and slime all over myself. "Let me out of here!" I yelled. "I don't belong here!" I could still hear the two men moving down the hall, a mixture of flesh and metal scraping against the concrete. I screamed again, knowing no one was coming to help me. I tried to force myself to be calm, but it was no use. After a while, I heard someone approaching. I was in a restless doze, my mind a blank slate of suffering, but the sound woke me from the haze. The muscles in my arms burned from being bound for so long and from all the twisting I had done. I braced myself for whatever horror was about to come through the door. The footsteps grew closer, and then a woman walked into the room. She stopped in the doorway and looked at me. She was missing an eye, a deep black hole in its place. Her hair was greasy and tangled, a matted brown nest. Her skin was pale but dirty. She was dressed in rags. I couldn't guess her age, but I could tell by her one good eye that she was a grown woman. "Still thinking?" she asked, in a raspy voice. "What?" She took a shaky step forward. "Are you still thinking about whether or not to feed the pigs?" I watched her cautiously. "Yes. Who are you? What do you want?" "I was in your position once," she said, "trying to decide my fate. I couldn't believe this was happening. What happens after we die? It's not what I was taught. Religion didn't warn me about this place." I continued to struggle with my bindings as I asked, "You killed yourself too? Another one like me? You're not one of those creatures?" She snorted. It breaks my heart that you have to ask that question. She touched the empty socket where her eye used to be. Though I understand your caution. Yes, I killed myself. I've been here for a very, very long time, but that was my choice. I decided to take my chances here. I nodded toward the door. What's out there? She sighed heavily and leaned against the wall. I don't even know where to begin. It's not like any place you've ever seen. You go down that hall and you enter it, and she swallowed hard. You'll understand when you see it. Is it that bad? Why do all the freaks here want to maim and kill each other? She leaned her head back against the wall and said, It would take years to fully understand this place. You don't have that kind of time. You have to decide now. Stay or feed the pigs. They tell me hell is worse than this, but it can't be by much. The monsters and the suicides mingle in the black farm, killing, raping, destroying. And every day you wake up wondering how long you have until you're killed. It's a never-ending cycle. Then why did you stay? I pressed. Why didn't you feed the pigs? I don't even know what it means, but I'll do anything for a chance to go back. I can't stay here. I can't. She gave me a sad smile. Why? Why did I choose this? It's simple, really. I'm a coward. I was a coward in life, and I'm a coward in death. When I was given the options, when that moment came, I chose to stay here. I didn't know what was waiting for me out there. It was simply a choice I made out of fear. What are the pigs? What did they do to you? I asked. She suddenly turned to leave. I think you'll have to find that out for yourself. But I have one word of warning. Think long and hard before you make your final decision. Sometimes, suffering to overcome fear is better than suffering for eternity. Be brave. What should I do? I called after her, struggling in my chair as she walked out the door. She stopped and looked back over her shoulder one last time. Her eye locked on to mine as she spoke in a whisper. Feed the pigs. Then she was gone. I sat there in the silence again, my mind reeling, desperately weighing my options. I still couldn't fully comprehend the situation I was in. It was too much, too overwhelming. This couldn't be what lay on the other side of life. I don't know what I was expecting. This was not a nightmare. Questions crashed in my head like waves against a sinking ship. How could I decide when I didn't even know what the choice meant? This place, the Black Farm, I couldn't stay here. But what if I was sent to hell? What if I wasn't sent back? The risk was too great. My existence would be buried in endless misery. But here there were others like me, the suicides. Not all of them monsters and freaks. I could survive here with them, try to exist together. Surely that would be better than being sent to hell. No, this was not how I would spend my eternity. I refused to let that happen. Even if it was a small sliver of hope, I would take it. I didn't want to think about what could have been. I didn't want to be tortured by doubt. I would feed the pigs and accept whatever fate had in store for me. When I thought about it, it was my only choice. I would feed the pigs. Hey, hello! Danny! I shouted, rattling the chair. I've made my decision. After a few seconds, I heard hurried footsteps approaching from the hall. Danny came through the doorway with an annoyed expression. I've made my decision, I said. I'll feed the pigs. Seems you've done a lot of thinking since we last spoke, Danny said sarcastically. I licked my lips. You would, too, if you were in my position. Danny walked around behind me. I was in your position, and I made a different choice. My eyes widened as Danny pulled a thin cloth over my head, blindfolding me. I took the deepest breath I could, but it still felt hollow. I felt Danny untying me from the chair, and my body sagged as my strained muscles were finally freed. I stretched my chest and popped my knuckles with satisfaction, pulling my fingers behind my back as my joints cracked. "Keep the blindfold on and follow me," Danny said as he helped me to my feet. My legs trembled as I put my weight on them. I felt weak after being in one position for so long. My hands reached out blindly and found Danny's shoulder. I placed my hands on it as he led us out of the room. As we entered the hallway, I was suddenly aware of sounds I hadn't noticed before. The clanking of metal, the tearing of flesh, the sound of something vomiting. The noises were so vivid in my ears, painting a horrifying picture for my already haunted imagination. I gripped Danny's shoulder tighter, stumbling behind him, my heart hammering in my chest. I heard something following us, but Danny didn't seem concerned. A wet, sloppy sound moved across the concrete a few inches behind us, and I suddenly felt hot breath on my neck, followed by a wet clicking of a tongue. My breathing became quicker and heavier as fear constricted my throat. "Going to feed the pig," something whispered in my ear. I felt it sticking very close to my head, and I tried not to think about what it was doing to me. It was wet and sloppy. I could hear it snorting and hawking. "It's a very hungry pig. Make sure it gets enough to eat," the creature whispered. Again, its voice low and unlike anything I had ever heard. It was a series of growls and moans garbled together to form distorted words. To my relief, I heard the thing back away and stop following us. I continued to follow Danny. He remained silent as we walked down the hall. I could feel a change in the air around us. The heat was becoming cooler. It was quite pleasant until the temperature continued to drop, and soon I was shivering miserably from the cold. I couldn't see, but I could feel a cool breeze on my face, as if we were outdoors. I hadn't heard Danny open a door, but nothing about this place was natural. It was like reality folding in on itself, or film melting and running together. As my teeth were chattering, I was suddenly hit by a blast of extreme heat that made me hold my breath. My feet got tangled as the terrain changed, and suddenly I was walking on a warm, metal floor. I was overwhelmed by the sound of furnaces and the grinding of machinery. I couldn't see, but I felt like there was a huge, open space above me. I smelled ash and tasted dirt in my nose. My back was drenched in sweat. Suddenly, I bumped into Danny as he stopped. I took a few quick steps back and muttered an apology. I could hear movement in front of me, the clanking of chains with the weird clicking sound of the metal floor. Something was snorting too, and then the room was filled with the deafening squeal of a pig. I covered my ears, the sound threatening to shatter the walls, my head throbbing. I clenched my teeth as the noise echoed throughout the room and settled into a low snort and growl. "It's enormous." "I have another," Danny announced with extreme deference. "He wishes to feed the pig." I waited, expecting to hear a response. The cloth around my eyes hid my vision. I realized my knees were shaking and my back was drenched with sweat. I was terrified. "If that is what he wishes, Danny said, and I could hear him bowing. A silent conversation had taken place that I couldn't hear. Danny took my hand and pushed me forward. "Go to the pig," he instructed. My body froze and my knees locked. Deprived of my sight, I held my arms out, trying to keep my balance. The heat and the smell of ash made me sick. I felt like I was going to vomit, my stomach rolling like a dead sea. I didn't know where I was or what horror lay in front of me. I felt lost and small. A tear escaped my eye and soaked into the cloth around my face. "Please," I pleaded, "will you tell me what's happening?" Danny was suddenly behind me again, pushing me forward. He guided my hands towards something as we walked in unison. Even with the blindfold, I could see a huge, dark mass towering in front of me. As we walked forward, I was suddenly hit by a horrible smell, and I gagged and turned away. Danny tightened his grip and forced me onward. I could feel something right in front of me, a moving mass of living flesh. Then hot breath blew in my face, a continuous blast of heat erupting in short bursts. I vomited all over myself. The source of the foul stench was coming from the hot air. I choked on my own reflux, cutting off my oxygen for a moment. Danny released my hands, and I took a few seconds to steady my breathing. I was crying, fear and misery collapsing my will. The wet cloth stank as I breathed it in. I begged for it all to be over, and then something snorted right in front of me. I was standing before the pig. It was the source of the dark mass in my obscured vision. An enormous, bloated creature, filling my senses with every breath it blasted into my face. Danny raised my hands, and I suddenly touched the pig's snout. I recoiled instantly, but Danny held my hands in place. Its hair was coarse and brittle as my trembling hands touched its nose. The size of the animal became apparent to me. A huge, fat creature with the weight of more than a ton of flesh. It shifted under my sweaty hands, and it opened its mouth slightly. My fingers brushed over, teeth the size of kitchen knives, and I realized its mouth was a cavern. The pig squealed again, and I heard its hooves pound the ground, sounding like thunder rolling across an open field in the middle of summer. "Please take this blindfold off," I begged, my legs turning to jelly. Danny had stepped back a few feet, and I heard reverence in his voice. "You don't want to do that." I jumped as the pig nudged me with his snout. A wet mass of flesh pressed against my face. I shivered, recoiling, holding my hands up and letting out an involuntary sound of fear. "Feed the pig," Danny commanded, his voice cold as iron. "You've made your choice, and now you will live with it. This is your only chance to go back, or maybe the pig won't like the taste of you and send you to hell. Only one way to find out." My eyes widened behind the vomit-soaked cloth. "Won't like the taste of me?" "Climb into his mouth," Danny ordered. I pissed myself. "No, you can't be serious." Danny's voice was firm. "Climb into its mouth and don't stop crawling forward until it's finished with you." "Please," I begged, turning toward Danny's voice, holding my hands out blindly. "Please, there has to be another way. Don't make me do this." I was a mess of snot and tears. My words came out of my mouth like a toddler's. Danny stepped forward and spun me back around to face the pig. "Do it. You made your choice. It'll all be over soon. This is your only chance." I could feel the pig breathing on me. Its snout was inches away from mine. The smell and the heat made me want to vomit again, but I held it back. This was insane. It couldn't be real. My mind reeled, twisting in chaos and fear. Was there another way? I couldn't do this. I couldn't. Suddenly, I remembered the woman's words. Sometimes, suffering through fear is better than suffering for eternity. Be brave. My trembling hands reached for the pig and grabbed his thick hair. I felt it slowly lower its head and open its mouth. It was waiting for me. Its thick, hot breath blasted into my nose. This was the point of no return. I slowly grabbed its teeth and pulled myself toward the jaw. Its head was at a downward angle, so I was lying prone on a 45-degree slant. Its wet tongue flattened beneath me, and I trembled so badly I could barely breathe. Tears soaked my blindfold, and my heart hammered against my ribs. I slowly brought my hands forward and found another tooth to grab onto. Gritting my teeth, I pulled my body into its mouth, past my knees. The pig lifted its head, and I was suddenly horizontal on its tongue. Saliva and slime ran all over me, and the heat was so intense I nearly passed out. My head hit its incisors with a clack as I pulled myself further in. Its inner cheek pressed against me, closing my body in like a wet, fleshy coffin. Screaming in terror, I reached my hands forward and grabbed more teeth. I pulled myself deeper into its mouth. I was in up to my waist, and I felt my legs slip past its lips. My entire body was covered in slime, and I began to sob. I grabbed for another tooth in the darkness, and that's when the pig started to chew. I screamed in absolute agony as my body was compressed between its massive teeth. I heard my legs snap instantly and felt the bones burst through my skin. I shook violently as my body convulsed in shock, a mangled mess of blood and pain. Its tongue pushed me further into its mouth, and I felt it bite down on my shoulder. My eyes bulged in their sockets as I screamed. A hot blast of air shot down my collarbone. I vomited uncontrollably, unable to help myself. Pain consumed me. I kept crawling, screaming, my bloodshot eyes wide with intensity. I reached my good arm forward, wet with drool, searching for another tooth. I clenched my teeth, blood spraying between them, as my fingers gripped something solid. The pig bit down again, its tongue twisting my body so its teeth came down on my knees. The pain threatened to make me pass out, but my screams forced my eyes to stay open. God, make it stop! I yelled, my trembling hand still gripping the tooth ahead. Please stop! I clenched my teeth so hard they broke. I screamed as I slowly pulled my mangled body deeper into its mouth. Something was changing. Its tightening throat closed around my head, and I realized I was almost through. Come on! Come on! I pleaded, my vocal cords cracking. I reached forward and grabbed a thick flap of flesh. My head popped through, and the pig bit down on me again. I gasped, blood gushing from my mouth in a great red torrent. Its teeth pierced through my stomach, devouring my insides like swollen noodles. I was too shocked to scream. With the last of my strength, as the blackness took me, I lunged forward and felt myself sliding down its throat. Darkness. I screamed. The heat was so intense, I thought I was going to melt. Something was banging on metal. Colors and images flashed through my mind so quickly I could only recognize their shapes. Blood filled my eyes. I felt like I was going to keep falling forever. Suddenly, my eyes shot open, and I fell. Breath rushed back into my lungs like a pure, wonderful wave. My face slammed into a wooden floor, and I cried out as I felt my nose break. I tasted my own blood. I had stopped falling, but a fire burned in my throat, and I was impossibly thirsty. I was lying on the floor. I slowly opened my eyes again, and the blackness began to fade. Colors started to appear, and things came into focus. I was in my wooden shed. My hands went to my throat, and I gripped it. There was the rope I had used to hang myself, but now it had been severed, freeing me from death's grip. Relief washed over me in a tidal wave of gratitude. I curled up on the floor and sobbed, my tears streaming onto the dirty floorboards. My body shook as I cried, wet noises escaping my trembling lips. I had been spared. I was alive again. From my place on the floor, I looked up. My voice was broken. Thank you, God. Thank you. I fell into another fit of uncontrollable sobs. I promise I won't waste my life again. I promise I will make things right. I'll fix everything. I don't know how long it was before I got to my feet. Time seemed to stretch on forever. My mind refused to remember the horror of what I had just witnessed, but I knew I would do everything I could to make the most of my life. I would live every day to its fullest. I would dedicate myself to helping others. I would help other suicides and try to save them from what awaited them at the Black Farm. I didn't want anyone else to witness the horror of what suicide brings. I didn't want anyone else to have to feed the pigs,